Welcome to the Explainer. Today, electric cars in Ireland. Are you actually saving money, or is it a bit of a cod? Let's get straight into the numbers.
Okay, let's dive right into this. You can see the steep climb here on the left. That's the upfront premium for an EV compared to your standard petrol or diesel motor. For an average working Irish family, you're talking thousands extra right off the bat. It's a massive financial barrier before you even put the key in the ignition.
So, the real cost of EVs, fact versus fiction.
It's time to separate the dealership chat from the reality on the ground. The perception out there is that the minute you ditch the diesel, you're rolling in savings. But the truth? Well, it depends entirely on your specific living situation. Going electric is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all scenario for the Irish public. Which brings us to upfront costs versus running costs, the real financial battle. So, the crucial point is this trade-off right here. You take a substantial hit on the purchase price, all on the promise of cheaper daily driving. But how long does it actually take a working family doing the daily commute, heading to the shops, doing the GAA run on the weekend, to recoup that initial spend? If you don't do high mileage, breaking even takes a hell of a lot longer than you might think.
Next up, EV grants. Who is actually benefiting from these?
Now, the government hands out these grants to encourage the switch, right? But because the barrier to entry is so incredibly high, these grants end up disproportionately benefiting high-income early adopters. Basically, people who already have the capital to buy a brand new, expensive motor are getting a taxpayer subsidy. Meanwhile, the average working family struggling to get finance, they're very often left completely out of the equation. As highlighted here on grants and incentives, the data shows a deep structural inequality in how the current system functions. It inadvertently rewards those who are already financially comfortable, creating a really stark divide. Let's talk about the charging divide: homeowners versus renters.
And this brilliantly illustrates the daily reality of keeping the car moving, which is based entirely on where you live. Over on one side, you've got the homeowner with a driveway who plugs in overnight on a cheap smart meter tariff for a few quid. On the other side, a renter in a terrace or an apartment, totally reliant on a public forecourt. They're sitting out in the lashing rain, paying premium rates. It's two completely different financial realities.
Just look at how those running costs stack up. Public fast chargers can sometimes cost up to 4 or 5 times more per kilowatt hour than a home night rate. If you're a renter relying on that public network, your running costs aren't actually much cheaper than just filling up a standard diesel car. The promised land of cheap driving absolutely vanishes without a driveway. Now, let's look at battery life and long-term depreciation. Let's move to this and see how it builds across the lifespan of the motor. Year 1, you drive off the forecourt, everything is grand. Year 4, you're in for your first NCT. But look over at year 8. That is when the standard battery warranty usually expires. And that creates a massive, looming anxiety for the used car market. And you know, that anxiety translates directly into hard cash. We're looking at severe depreciation driven entirely by battery replacement fears. If a battery goes outside of warranty, the replacement costs can practically write off the car. So when it's time for that working family to sell up, they take a substantial hit to their bottom line, just because the used market is incredibly cautious of old batteries. So, the final verdict. Does it actually make financial sense? So who does an EV genuinely save money for right now? Well, homeowners with a driveway on a smart tariff who do high daily mileage. For them, it makes brilliant financial sense. But who should avoid it for now? Renters? Anyone relying on public charges? Or families with tight budgets who simply cannot bridge that initial price gap without taking on crippling finance rates? Which leaves us with this final thought to finish up our explainer. Is Ireland's EV dream actually ready for the reality of the working family? Take a good hard look at your own living situation, your own driveway, or the lack of one, and weigh it against the data. The savings are out there, for sure, but only if you hold the right cards. Thanks a million for joining me on this explainer. Make sure you do your own maths, and I'll catch you on the next one.